14. The Western land, nervous under the beginning change. The Western states, nervous as horses before a thunderstorm. The great owners, nervous, sensing a change, knowing nothing of the nature of the change. The great owners, striking at the immediate thing, the widening government, the growing labor unity, striking at new taxes, at plans, not knowing these things are results, not causes. Results, not causes, results, not causes. The causes lie deep and simple. The causes are a hunger in a stomach, multiplied 1,000,000 times, a hunger in a single soul, hunger for joy and some security, multiplied 1,000,000 times, muscles and mind aching to grow, to work, to create, multiplied 1,000,000 times. The last clear definite function of man, muscles aching to work, minds aching to create beyond the single need, this is man. To build a wall, to build a house, a dam, and in the wall and house and dam to put something of manself, and to manself take back something of the wall, the house, the dam, to take hard muscles from the lifting, to take the clear lines and form from conceiving. For man, unlike any other thing organic or inorganic in the universe, grows beyond his work, walks up the stairs of his concepts, emerges ahead of his accomplishments. This you may say of man, when theories change and crash, when schools, philosophies, when narrow dark alleys of thought, national, religious, economic, grow and disintegrate, man reaches, stumbles forward, painfully, mistakenly sometimes. Having stepped forward, he may slip back, but only half a step, never the full step back. This you may say and know it and know it. This you may know when the bombs plummet out of the black plains on the marketplace, when prisoners are stuck like pigs, when the crushed bodies drain filthily in the dust. You may know it in this way. If the step were not being taken, if the stumbling forward ache were not alive, the bombs would not fall, the throats would not be cut. Fear the time when the bombs stop falling while the bombers live, for every bomb is proof that the spirit has not died. And fear the time when the strikes stop while the great owners live, for every little beaten strike is proof that the step is being taken. And this you can know, fear the time when manself will not suffer and die for a concept, for this one quality is the foundation of manself, and this one quality is man, distinctive in the universe. The Western states nervous under the beginning change. Texas and Oklahoma, Kansas and Arkansas, New Mexico, Arizona, California. A single family moved from the land. Pa borrowed money from the bank, and now the bank wants the land. The land company, that's the bank when it has land, wants tractors, not families on the land. Is a tractor bad? Is the power that turns the long furrows wrong? If this tractor were ours it would be good, not mine, but ours. If our tractor turned the long furrows of our land, it would be good. Not my land, but ours. We could love that tractor then as we have loved this land when it was ours. But this tractor does two things, it turns the land and turns us off the land. There is little difference between this tractor and a tank. The people are driven, intimidated, hurt by both. We must think about this. One man, one family driven from the land, this rusty car creaking along the highway to the west. I lost my land, a single tractor took my land. I am alone and I am bewildered. And in the night one family camps in a ditch and another family pulls in and the tents come out. The two men squat on their hams and the women and children listen. Here is the node, you who hate change and fear revolution. Keep these two squatting men apart, make them hate, fear, suspect each other. Here is the onlogga of the thing you fear. This is the zygote. For here I lost my land is changed, a cell is split and from its splitting grows the thing you hate, we lost our land. The danger is here, for two men are not as lonely and perplexed as one. And from this first twee there grows a still more dangerous thing, I have a little food plus I have none. If from this problem the sum is we have a little food, the thing is on its way, the movement has direction. Only a little multiplication now, and this land, this tractor are ours. The two men squatting in a ditch, the little fire, the side meat stewing in a single pot, The silent, stone-eyed women, behind, the children listening with their souls to words their minds do not understand. The night draws down. The baby has a cold. Here, take this blanket. It's wool. It was my mother's blanket, take it for the baby. This is the thing to bomb. This is the beginning, from I to we. If you who own the things people must have could understand this, you might preserve yourself. If you could separate causes from results, if you could know that Paine, Marx, Jefferson, Lenin, were results, not causes, you might survive. But that you cannot know. For the quality of owning freezes you forever into I, and cuts you off forever from the we. The Western states are nervous under the beginning change. Need is the stimulus to concept, concept to action. 500,000 people moving over the country, 1 million more, restive to move, 10 million more feeling the first nervousness. And tractors turning the multiple furrows in the vacant land. 15. Along 66 the hamburger stands, Al and Susie's place, Carl's lunch, Joe and Minnie, Will's eats. Board and bat shacks. 2 gasoline pumps in front, a screen door, a long bar, stools, and a footrail. Near the door 3 slot machines, showing through glass the wealth in nickels 3 bars will bring. And beside them, the nickel phonograph with records piled up like pies, ready to swing out to the turntable and play dance music. T-Pie Tin, thanks for the memory, Bing Crosby, Benny Goodman. At one end of the counter a covered case, candy cough drops, caffeine sulfate called Sleepless, no dose, candy, cigarettes, razor blades, aspirin, Bromo-Seltzer, Alka-Seltzer. The walls decorated with posters, bathing girls, blondes with big breasts and slender hips and waxen faces, in white bathing suits, and holding a bottle of Coca-Cola and smiling, see what you get with a Coca-Cola. Long bar, and salts, peppers, mustard pots, and paper napkins. Beer taps behind the counter, and in back the coffee urns, shiny and steaming with glass gauges showing the coffee level. And pies in wire cages and oranges in pyramids of 4. And little piles of post toasties, corn flakes, stacked up in designs. The signs on cards, picked out with shining mica, pies like mother used to make. Credit makes enemies. Let's be friends. Ladies may smoke but be careful where you lay your butts. Eat here and keep your wife for a pet. Itty wee bod? Down at one end the cooking plates, pots of stew, potatoes, pot roast beef, gray roast pork waiting to be sliced. Minnie or Susie or May, middle-aging behind the counter, hair curled in rouge and powder on a sweating face. Taking orders in a soft low voice, calling them to the cook with a screech like a peacock. Mopping the counter with circular strokes, polishing the big shining coffee urns. The cook is Joe or Carl or Al, hot in a white coat and apron, beady sweat on white forehead, below the white cook's cap, moody, rarely speaking, looking up for a moment at each new entry. Wiping the griddle, slapping down the hamburger. He repeats May's orders gently, scrapes the griddle, wipes it down with burlap. Moody and silent. May is the contact, smiling, irritated, near to outbreak, smiling while her eyes look on past, unless for truck drivers. There's the backbone of the joint. Where the trucks stop, that's where the customers come. Can't fool truck drivers, they know. They bring the customer. They know. Give them a stale cup of coffee and they're off the joint. Treat 'em right and they come back. May really smiles with all her might at truck drivers. She bridles a little, fixes her back hair so that her breasts will lift with her raised arms, passes the time of day and indicates great things, great times, great jokes. Al never speaks. He is no contact. Sometimes he smiles a little at a joke, but he never laughs. Sometimes he looks up at the vivaciousness in May's voice, and then he scrapes the griddle with a spatula, scrapes the grease into an iron trough around the plate. He presses down a hissing hamburger with his spatula. He lays the split buns on the plate to toast and heat. He gathers up stray onions from the plate and heaps them on the meat and presses them in with the spatula. He puts half the bun on top of the meat, paints the other half with melted butter, with thin pickle relish. Holding the bun on the meat, he slips the spatula under the thin pad of meat, flips it over, lays the buttered half on top, and drops the hamburger on a small plate. Quarter of a dill pickle, 2 black olives beside the sandwich. Al skims the plate down the counter like a quoit. And he scrapes his griddle with the spatula and looks moodily at the stew kettle. Cars whisking by on 66. License plates. Mass, Tennessee, RI, NY, Vermont, Ohio. Going west. Fine cars, cruising at 65. There goes one of them cords. Looks like a coffin on wheels. But, Jesus, how they travel. See that law sale? Me for that. I ain't a hog. I go for all a sale. F you goin' big, what's a matter with a cad? Jew a little bigger, little faster. I'd take a Zephyr myself. You ain't ridin' no fortune, but you got class and speed. Give me a Zephyr. Well, sir, you may get a laugh out of this, I'll take Buick Buick. That's good enough. But, hell, that costs in the Zephyr class and it ain't got the sap. I don't care. I don't want nothing to do with nothing of Henry Ford's. I don't like 'em. Never did. Got a brother worked in the plant. Ought to hear him tell. Well, a Zephyr got sap. The big cars on the highway. Languid, heat-rattled ladies, small nucleuses about whom revolve 1,000 accoutrements, creams, ointments to grease themselves, coloring matter in phials, black, pink, red, white, green, silver, to change the color of hair, eyes, lips, nails, brows, lashes, lids. Oils, seeds, and pills to make the bowels move. A bag of bottles, syringes, pills, powders, fluids, jellies to make their sexual intercourse safe, odorless, and unproductive. And this apart from clothes. What a hell of a nuisance. Lines of weariness around the eyes, lines of discontent down from the mouth, breasts lying heavily in little hammocks, stomach and thighs straining against cases of rubber. And the mouths panting, the eyes sullen, disliking sun and wind and earth, resenting food and weariness, hating time that rarely makes them beautiful and always makes them old. Beside them, little pot-bellied men in light suits and Panama hats, clean, pink men with puzzled, worried eyes, with restless eyes. Worried because formulas do not work out, hungry for security and yet sensing its disappearance from the earth. In their lapels the insignia of lodges and service clubs, places where they can go and, by a weight of numbers of little worried men, reassure themselves that business is noble and not the curious ritualized thievery they know it is, that businessmen are intelligent in spite of the records of their stupidity, that they are kind and charitable in spite of the principles of sound business, that their lives are rich instead of the thin tiresome routines they know, and that a time is coming when they will not be afraid anymore. And these two, going to California, going to sit in the lobby of the Beverly Wilshire Hotel and watch people they envy go by, to look at mountains, mind you, and great trees, he with his worried eyes and she thinking how the sun will dry her skin. Going to look at the Pacific Ocean, and I'll bet $100,000 to nothing at all, he will say, it isn't as big as I thought it would be. And she will envy plump young bodies on the beach. Going to California really to go home again. To say, so-and-so was at the table next to us at the Trocadero. She's really a mess, but she does wear nice clothes. And I talked to good sound businessmen out there. They don't see a chance till we get rid of that fellow in the White House. And, I got it from a man in the know, she has syphilis, you know. She was in that Warner picture. Man said she slept her way into pictures. Well, she got what she was looking for. But the worried eyes are never calm, and the pouting mouth is never glad. The big car cruising along at 60. I want a cold drink. Well, there's something up ahead. Want to stop? Do you think it would be clean? Clean as you're going to find in this godforsaken country. Well, maybe the bottled soda will be all right. The great car squeals and pulls to a stop. The fat worried man helps his wife out. May looks at and past them as they enter. Al looks up from his griddle, and down again. May knows. They'll drink a 5-cent soda and crab that it ain't cold enough. The woman will use 6 paper napkins and drop them on the floor. The man will choke and try to put the blame on May. The woman will sniff as though she smelled rotting meat, and they will go out again and tell forever afterward that the people in the West are sullen. And May, when she is alone with Al, has a name for them. She calls them shithiels. Truck drivers. That's the stuff. Here's a big transport comin'. Hope they stop, take away the taste of them shithiels. When I worked in that hotel in Albuquerque, Al, the way they steal, ever darn thing. The bigger the car they got, the more they steal, towels, silver, soap dishes. I can't figure it. And Al, morosely, where you think they get them big cars and stuff? Born with 'em? You won't never have nothin'. The transport truck, a driver and relief. How about stoppin' for a cup of java? I know this dump. How's the schedule? Oh, we're ahead. Pull up, then. They's a ol' war horse in here that's a kick. Good java, too. The truck pulls up. 2 men in khaki riding trousers, boots, short jackets, and shiny visored military caps. Screen door, slam. Hiya, May? Well, if it ain't Big Bill the Rat. When'd you get back on this run? Week ago. The other man puts a nickel in the phonograph, watches the disc slip free and the turntable rise up under it. Bing Crosby's voice, golden. Thanks for the memory of sunburn at the shore. You might have been a headache, but you never were a bore. And the truck driver sings for May's ears. You might have been a haddock, but you never was a whore. May laughs. Who's ya friend, Bill? New on this run, ain't he? The other puts a nickel in the slot machine, wins 4 slugs, and puts them back. Walks to the counter. Well, what's it gonna be? Oh, cup of java. Kinda pie you got? Banana cream, pineapple cream, chocolate cream, an apple. Make it apple. Wait, kind is that big thick one? May lifts it out and sniffs it. Banana cream. Cut off a hunk, make it a big hunk. Man at the slot machine says, 2 all around. 2 it is. Seen any new etchins lately, Bill? Well, here's one. Now, you be careful front of a lady. Oh, this ain't bad. Little kid comes in late to school. Teacher says, why you late? Kid says, had to take a heifer down, get her bread. Teacher says, couldn't your old man do it? Kid says, sure he could, but not as good as the bull. May squeaks with laughter, harsh screeching laughter. Al, slicing onions carefully on a board, looks up and smiles, and then looks down again. Truck drivers, that's the stuff. Gonna leave a quarter each for May. 15 cents for pie and coffee and a dime for May. And they ain't trying to make her, neither. Sitting together on the stools, spoons sticking up out of the coffee mugs. Passing the time of day. And Al, rubbing down his griddle, listening but making no comment. Bing Crosby's voice stops. The turntable drops down and the record swings into its place in the pile. The purple light goes off. The nickel, which has caused all this mechanism to work, has caused Crosby to sing and an orchestra to play. This nickel drops from between the contact points into the box where the profits go. The nickel, unlike most money, has actually done a job of work, has been physically responsible for a reaction. Steam spurts from the valve of the coffee urn. The compressor of the ice machine chugs softly for a time and then stops. The electric fan in the corner waves its head slowly back and forth, sweeping the room with a warm breeze. On the highway, on 66, the cars whiz by. "They was a Massachusetts car stopped a while ago," said May. Big Bill grasped his cup around the top so that the spoon stuck up between his first and second fingers. He drew in a snort of air with the coffee, to cool it. "You ought to be out on 66. Cars from all over the country. All headin' west. Never seen so many before. Sure some honeys on the road. We seen a wreck this mornin'," his companion said. "Big car. Big cad, a special job and a honey, low, Cream color, special job. Hit a truck. Folded the radiator right back into the driver. Must have been doing 90. Steering wheel went right on through the guy and left him a wiggling like a frog on a hook. Peach of a car. A honey. You can have her for peanuts now. Driving alone, the guy was. Al looked up from his work. Hurt the truck? Oh, Jesus Christ. Wasn't a truck. One of them cut down cars full of stoves and pans and mattresses and kids and chickens. Going west, you know. This guy come by us doing 90, reared up on two wheels just to pass us, and a car's comin' so he cuts in and wangs this here truck. Drove like he's bling drunk. Jesus, the air was full of bedclothes and chickens and kids. Killed one kid. Never seen such a mess. We pulled up. Oh man, that's driving the truck. He just stands there looking at that dead kid. Can't get a word out of him. Jurum-dum. God almighty, the road is full of them families going west. Never seen so many. Gets worse all the time. Wonder where the hell they all come from? Wonder where they all go to, said May. Come here for gas sometimes, but they don't hardly never buy nothing else. People says they steal. We ain't got nothing layin' around. They never stole nothing from us. Big Bill, munching his pie, looked up the road through the screened window. Better tie your stuff down. I think you got some of 'em comin' now. A 1926 Nash sedan pulled wearily off the highway. The back seat was piled nearly to the ceiling with sacks, with pots and pans, and on the very top, right up against the ceiling, two boys rode. On the top of the car, a mattress and a folded tent poles tied along the running board. The car pulled up to the gas pumps. A dark-haired, hatchet-faced man got slowly out. And the two boys slid down from the load and hit the ground. May walked around the counter and stood in the door. The man was dressed in gray wool trousers and a blue shirt, dark blue with sweat on the back and under the arms. The boys in overalls and nothing else, ragged patched overalls. Their hair was light, and it stood up evenly all over their heads, for it had been roached. Their faces were streaked with dust. They went directly to the mud puddle under the hose and dug their toes into the mud. The man asked, "Can we get some water, ma'am?" A look of annoyance crossed May's face. "Sure, go ahead," she said softly over her shoulder, "I'll keep my eye on the hose." She watched while the man slowly unscrewed the radiator cap and ran the hose in. A woman in the car, a flaxen-haired woman, said, "See if you can't get it here." The man turned off the hose and screwed on the cap again. The little boys took the hose from him and they upended it and drank thirstily. The man took off his dark, stained hat and stood with a curious humility in front of the screen. "Could you see your way to sell us a loaf of bread, ma'am?" May said, "This ain't a grocery store. We got bread to make sandwiches." "I know, ma'am." His humility was insistent. "We need bread and there ain't nothing for quite a piece, they say. If we sell bread we gonna run out." May's tone was faltering. "We're hungry," the man said. "Why'n't you buy a sandwich? We got nice sandwiches, hamburgs. We'd sure admire to do that, ma'am. But we can't. We got to make a dime do all of us." And he said embarrassedly, "We ain't got but a little." May said, "You can't get no loaf of bread for a dime. We only got 15-cent loafs." From behind her Al growled, "God almighty, May, give 'em bread. We'll run out 'fore the bread truck comes." "Run out, then, goddamn it," said Al. And he looked sullenly down at the potato salad he was mixing. May shrugged her plump shoulders and looked to the truck drivers to show them what she was up against. She held the screen door open and the man came in, bringing a smell of sweat with him. The boys edged in behind him and they went immediately to the candy case and stared in, not with craving or with hope or even with desire, but just with a kind of wonder that such things could be. They were alike in size and their faces were alike. One scratched his dusty ankle with the toenails of his other foot. The other whispered some soft message and then they straightened their arms so that their clenched fists in the overall pockets showed through the thin blue cloth. May opened a drawer and took out a long wax paper wrapped loaf. This here is a 15-cent loaf." The man put his hat back on his head. He answered with inflexible humility, "Won't you, can't you see your way to cut off 10 cents worth?" Al said snarlingly, "God damn it, May. Give them the loaf." The man turned toward Al. "No, we want to buy 10 cents worth of it. We got it figured awful close, mister, to get to California." May said resignedly, "You can have this for 10 cents. That'd be robbin' you, ma'am." "Go ahead," Al says to take it. She pushed the wax-papered loaf across the counter. The man took a deep leather pouch from his rear pocket, untied the strings, and spread it open. It was heavy with silver and with greasy bills. "May sound funny to be so tight," he apologized. "We got 1,000 miles to go, and we don't know if we'll make it." He dug in the pouch with a forefinger, located a dime, and pinched in for it. When he put it down on the counter, he had a penny with it. He was about to drop the penny back into the pouch when his eye fell on the boys frozen before the candy counter. He moved slowly down to them. He pointed in the case at big long sticks of striped peppermint. "Is them penny candy, ma'am?" May moved down and looked in. "Which ones?" "There, them stripy ones." The little boys raised their eyes to her face and they stopped breathing. Their mouths were partly opened, their half-naked bodies were rigid. "Oh, them. Well, no, them's 2 for a penny." "Well, gimme 2 then, ma'am." He placed the copper cent carefully on the counter. The boys expelled their held breath softly. May held the big sticks out. "Take 'em," said the man. They reached timidly, each took a stick, and they held them down at their sides and did not look at them. But they looked at each other, and their mouth corners smiled rigidly with embarrassment. "Thank you, ma'am." The man picked up the bread and went out the door, and the little boys marched stiffly behind him, the red striped sticks held tightly against their legs. They leaped like chipmunks over the front seat and onto the top of the load, and they burrowed back out of sight like chipmunks. The man got in and started his car, and with a roaring motor and a cloud of blue oily smoke the ancient Nash climbed up on the highway and went on its way to the west. From inside the restaurant the truck drivers and May and Al stared after them. Big Bill wheeled back. "Them wasn't 2 for a cent candy," he said. "What's that to you?" May said fiercely. "Them was nickel a piece candy," said Bill. "We got to get goin'," said the other man. "We're droppin' time." They reached in their pockets. Bill put a coin on the counter and the other man looked at it and reached again and put down a coin. They swung around and walked to the door. "So long," said Bill. May called, "Hey. Wait a minute. You got change?" "You go to hell," said Bill, and the screen door slammed. May watched them get into the great truck, watched it lumber off in low gear, and heard the shift up the whining gears to cruising ratio. "Al," she said softly. He looked up from the hamburger he was patting thin and stacking between waxed papers. "What you want?" "Look there." She pointed at the coins beside the cups, 2 $half. Al walked near and looked, and then he went back to work. "Truck drivers," May said reverently, "and after them shitheels." Flies struck the screen with little bumps and droned away. The compressor chugged for a time and then stopped. On 66 the traffic whizzed by, trucks and fine streamlined cars and jalopies, and they went by with a vicious whiz. May took down the plates and scraped the pie crusts into a bucket. She found her damp cloth and wiped the counter with circular sweeps. And her eyes were on the highway, where life whizzed by. Al wiped his hands on his apron. He looked at a paper pinned to the wall over the griddle. 3 lines of marks in columns on the paper. Al counted the longest line. He walked along the counter to the cash register, rang "no sale," and took out a handful of nickels. "What ya doin'?" May asked. "Number 3's ready to pay off," said Al. He went on the 3rd slot machine and played his nickels in, and on the 5th spin of the wheels the 3 bars came up and the jackpot dumped out into the cup. Al gathered up the big handful of coins and went back of the counter. He dropped them in the drawer and slammed the cash register. Then he went back to his place and crossed out the line of dots. "Number 3 gets more play in the others," he said. Maybe I ought to shift 'em around. He lifted a lid and stirred the slowly simmering stew. I wonder what they'll do in California? Said May. Who? Them folks that was just in. Christ knows, said Al. S'pose they'll get work? How the hell would I know? Said Al. She stared eastward along the highway. Here comes a transport, double. Wonder if they stop? Hope they do. And as the huge truck came heavily down from the highway and parked, May seized her cloth and wiped the whole length of the counter. And she took a few swipes at the gleaming coffee urn too, and turned up the bottle gas under the urn. Al brought out a handful of little turnips and started to peel them. May's face was gay when the door opened and the two uniformed truck drivers entered. Hi, sister. I won't be a sister to no man, said May. They laughed and May laughed. What'll it be, boys? Oh, a cup of java. What kind of pie you got? Pineapple cream and banana cream and chocolate cream and apple. Give me apple. No, wait, what's that big thick one? May picked up the pie and smelled it. Pineapple cream, she said. Well, chop out a hunk of that. The cars whizzed viciously by on 66-16. Jodes and Wilsons crawled westward as a unit, El Reno and Bridgeport, Clinton, Elk City, Sayre, and Tuxtla. There's the border, and Oklahoma was behind. And this day the cars crawled on and on, through the panhandle of Texas. Shamrock and Elan Reed, Groom and Yarnell. They went through Amarillo in the evening, drove too long, and camped when it was dusk. They were tired and dusty and hot. Grandma had convulsions from the heat, and she was weak when they stopped. That night Al stole a fence rail and made a ridgepole on the truck, braced at both ends. That night they ate nothing but pan biscuits, cold and hard, held over from breakfast. They flopped down on the mattresses and slept in their clothes. The Wilsons didn't even put up their tent. Jodes and Wilsons were in flight across the panhandle, the rolling gray country, land and cut with old flood scars. They were in flight out of Oklahoma and across Texas. The land turtles crawled through the dust and the sun whipped the earth, and in the evening the heat went out of the sky and the earth sent up a wave of heat from itself. 2 days the families were in flight, but on the third the land was too huge for them and they settled into a new technique of living. The highway became their home and movement their medium of expression. Little by little they settled into the new life. Ruthie and Winfield first, then Al, then Connie and Rose of Sharon, and, last, the older ones. The land rolled like great stationary ground swells. Wild Dorado and Vega and Boise and Glen Rio. That's the end of Texas. New Mexico and the mountains. In the far distance, waved up against the sky, the mountains stood. And the wheels of the cars creaked around, and the engines were hot, and the steam spurted around the radiator caps. They crawled to the Pecos River, and crossed at Santa Rosa. And they went on for 20 miles. Al Jode drove the touring car, and his mother sat beside him, and Rose of Sharon beside her. Ahead the truck rolled. The hot air folded in waves over the land, and the mountains shivered in the heat. Al drove listlessly, hunched back in the seat, his hand hooked easily over the crossbar of the steering wheel. His gray hat, peaked and pulled to an incredibly cocky shape, was low over one eye, and as he drove, he turned and spat out the side now and then. Ma, beside him, had folded her hands in her lap, had retired into a resistance against weariness. She sat loosely, letting the movement of the car sway her body and her head. She squinted her eyes ahead at the mountains. Rose of Sharon was braced against the movement of the car, her feet pushed tight against the floor, and her right elbow hooked over the door. And her plump face was tight against the movement, and her head jiggled sharply because her neck muscles were tight. She tried to arch her whole body as a rigid container to preserve her fetus from shock. She turned her head toward her mother. "Ma," she said. Ma's eyes lighted up and she drew her attention toward Rose of Sharon. Her eyes went over the tight, tired, plump face, and she smiled. "Ma," the girl said, "when we get there, all you gonna pick fruit and kinda live in the country, ain't you?" Ma smiled a little satirically. We ain't there yet, she said. We don't know what it's like. We got to see. Me and Connie don't want to live in the country no more, the girl said. We got it all planned up what we gonna do. For a moment a little worry came on Ma's face. Ain't you gonna stay with us, with the family? She asked. Well, we talked all about it, me and Connie. Ma, we wanna live in a town. She went on excitedly. Connie gonna get a job in a store or maybe a factory. And he's gonna study at home, maybe radio, so he can get to be a expert and maybe later have his own store. And we'll go to pictures whenever. Connie says I'm gonna have a doctor when the baby's born, and he says we'll see how times is, and maybe I'll go to a hospital. And we'll have a car, little car. And after he studies at night, why, it'll be nice, and he tore a page out of Western love stories, and he's gonna send off for a course, 'cause it don't cost nothing to send off. Says right on that clipping. I seen it. And why, they even get you a job when you take that course, radios, it is, nice clean work, and a future. And we'll live in town and go to pictures whenever and, well, I'm gonna have electric iron, and the baby'll have all new stuff. Connie says all new stuff, widen, well, you seen in the catalog all the stuff they got for a baby. Maybe right at first while Connie's studying at home it won't be easy, but, well, when the baby comes, maybe he'll be all done studying and we'll have a place, little bit of a place. We don't want nothing fancy, but we want it nice for the baby. Her face glowed with excitement. And I thought, well, I thought maybe we could all go in town, and when Connie gets his store, maybe Al could work for him. Ma's eyes had never left the flushing face. Ma watched the structure grow and followed it. We don't want you to go away from us, she said. It ain't good for folks to break up. Al snorted, me work for Connie? How about Connie comes a workin' for me? He thinks he's the only son of a bitch can study at night? Ma suddenly seemed to know it was all a dream. She turned her head forward again and her body relaxed, but the little smile stayed around her eyes. I wonder how Grandma feels today, she said. Al grew tense over the wheel. A little rattle had developed in the engine. He speeded up and the rattle increased. He retarded his spark and listened, and then he speeded up for a moment and listened. The rattle increased to a metallic pounding. Al blew his horn and pulled the car to the side of the road. Ahead the truck pulled up and then backed slowly. 3 cars raced by, westward, and each one blew its horn and the last driver leaned out and yelled, "Where the hell you think you're stoppin'?" Tom backed the truck close, and then he got out and walked to the touring car. From the back of the loaded truck heads looked down. Al retarded his spark and listened to his idling motor. Tom asked, "What's a matter, Al?" Al speeded the motor. "Listen to her." The rattling pound was louder now. Tom listened. "Put up your spark and idle," he said. He opened the hood and put his head inside. "Now speed her." He listened for a moment and then closed the hood. "Well, I guess you're right, Al," he said. "Conrod bearing, ain't it?" "Sounds like it," said Tom. "I kept plenty oil in," Al complained. "Well, it you didn't get to her. Drier'n a bitch monkey now." "Well, there ain't nothing to do but tear her out. Look, I'll pull ahead and find a flat place to stop. You come ahead slow. Don't knock the pen out of her." Wilson asked, "Is it bad?" "Pretty bad," said Tom, and walked back to the truck and moved slowly ahead. Al explained, "I don't know what made her go out. I give her plenty of oil." Al knew the blame was on him. He felt his failure. Ma said, "It ain't your fault. You done everything right." And then she asked a little timidly, "Is it terrible bad?" "Well, it's hard to get at, and we got to get a new Conrad or else some Babbitt in this one." He sighed deeply. "I sure am glad Tom's here. I never fitted no bearing. Hope to Jesus Tom did." A huge red billboard stood beside the road ahead, and it threw a great oblong shadow. Tom edged the truck off the road and across the shallow roadside ditch, and he pulled up in the shadow. He got out and waited until Al came up. "Now go easy," he called. Take her slow or you'll break a spring too. Al's face went red with anger. He throttled down his motor. God damn it, he yelled, I didn't burn that Baron out. What do you mean, I'll bust a spring too? Tom grinned. Keep all 4 feet on the ground, he said. I didn't mean nothing. Just take her easy over this ditch. Al grumbled as he inched the touring car down, and up the other side. Don't you go giving nobody no I dry burned out that Baron. The engine clattered loudly now. Al pulled into the shade and shut down the motor. Tom lifted the hood and braced it. Can't even start on her before she cools off, he said. The family piled down from the cars and clustered about the touring car. Past, how bad? And he squatted on his hams. Tom turned to Al. Ever fitted one? No, said Al, I never. Course I had pans off. Tom said, well, we got to tear the pan off and get the rod out, and we got to get a new part and hone her and shim her and fit her. Good day's job. Got to go back to that lost place for a part, Santa Rosa. Albuquerque's about 75 miles on. Oh, Jesus, tomorrow's Sunday. We can't get nothing tomorrow. The family stood silently. Ruthie crept close and peered into the open hood, hoping to see the broken part. Tom went on softly, tomorrow's Sunday. Monday we'll get the thing and probably won't get her fitted for Tuesday. We ain't got the tools to make it easy. Gonna be a job. The shadow of a buzzard slid across the earth, and the family all looked up at the sailing blackbird. Pa said, what I'm scared of is we'll run out of money so we can't get there all. Here's all us eatin', and got to buy gas and oil. If we run out of money, I don't know what we gonna do. Wilson said, seems like it's my fault. This here goddamn Rex give me trouble right along. You folks been nice to us. Now you do pack up and get along. Me and Sary'll stay, and we'll figure some way. We don't aim to put you folks out none. Pa said slowly. We ain't gonna do it. We got almost a kin bond. Grandpa, he died in your tent. Sary said tiredly, we been nothing but trouble, nothing but trouble. Tom slowly made a cigarette, and inspected it and lighted it. He took off his ruined cap and wiped his forehead. I got an idea, he said. Maybe nobody gonna like it, but here she is. The nearer to California our folks get, the quicker they's gonna be money rollin' in. Now this here car'll go twice it as fast as that truck. Now here's my idea. You take out some of that stuff in the truck, and then all you folks but me and the preacher get in and move on. Me and Cassie'll stop here and fix this here car and then we drive on, day and night, and we'll catch up, or if we don't meet on the road, you'll be workin' anyways. And if you break down, why, you camp alongside the road till we come. You can't be no worse off, and if you get through, why, you'll be workin', and stuff'll be easy. Cassie can give me a lift with this here car, and we'll come sailin'. The gathered family considered it. Uncle John dropped to his hams beside Pa. Al said, won't you need me to give you a hand with that conrod? You said your own self you never fixed one. That's right, Al agreed. All you got to have is a strong back. Maybe the preacher don't want to stay. Well, whoever, I don't care, said Tom. Pa scratched the dry earth with his forefinger. I kinda got a notion Tom's right, he said. It ain't going to do no good all of us stayin' here. We can get 50, 100 miles on 'fore dark. Ma said worriedly, how you gonna find us? We'll be on the same road, said Tom. 66 right on through. Come to a place named Bakersfield. Seen it on the map I got. You go straight on there. Yeah, but when we get to California and spread out sideways off this road. Don't you worry, Tom reassured her. We're gonna find ya. California ain't the whole world. Looks like an awful big place on the map, said Ma. Pa appealed for advice. John, you see any reason why not? No, said John. Mr. Wilson, it's your car. You got any objections if my boy fixes her and brings her on? I don't see none, said Wilson. Seems like you folks done everything for us already. Don't see why I can't give your boy a hand. You can be workin', Layin' in a little money, if we don't catch up with ya, said Tom. "And suppose we all do lay around here. There ain't no water here, and we can't move this here car. But s'pose you all get out there and get to work. Why, you'd have money, and maybe a house to live in. How about it, Cassie? Wanna stay with me and gimme a lift?" "I wanna do what's best for you folks," said Cassie. "You took me in, carried me along. I'll do whatever." "Well, you lay on your back and get grease in your face if you stay here," Tom said. "Suits me alright." Pa said, "Well, if that's the way she's gonna go, we better get a shovine. We can maybe squeeze in 100 miles 'fore we stop." Ma stepped in front of him. "I ain't gonna go." "What you mean, you ain't gonna go? You got to go. You got to look after the family." Pa was amazed at the revolt. Ma stepped to the touring car and reached in on the floor of the back seat. She brought out a jack handle and balanced it in her hand easily. "I ain't gonna go," she said. "I tell you, you got to go. We made up our mind." And now Ma's mouth set hard. She said softly, "Only way you gonna get me to go is whup me." She moved the jack handle gently again. "And I'll shame you, Pa. I won't take no one, cryin' and beggin'. I'll light into you. And you ain't so sure you can whup me anyways. And if you do get me, I swear to God I'll wait till you got your back turned, or you're sittin' down, and I'll knock you belly up with a bucket. I swear to holy Jesus' sake I will." Pa looked helplessly about the group. "She's sassy," he said. "I never seen her so sassy." Ruthie giggled shrilly. The jack handle flicked hungrily back and forth in Ma's hand. "Come on," said Ma. "You made up your mind. Come on and whup me. You try it. But I ain't goin', or if I do, you ain't gonna get no sleep, 'cause I'll wait and I'll wait, and you the minute you take sleep in your eyes, I'll slap you with a stick of stove wood." "So goddamn sassy," Pa murmured. "And she ain't young, neither." The whole group watched the revolt. They watched Pa, waiting for him to break into fury. They watched his lax hands to see the fists form. And Pa's anger did not rise, and his hands hung limply at his sides. And in a moment the group knew that Ma had won. And Ma knew it too. Tom said, "Ma, what's eatin' on you? What ya wanna do this away for? What's the matter with you anyways? You gone John Rabbit on us?" Ma's face softened, but her eyes were still fierce. "You done this 'thout thinkin' much," Ma said. "What we got left in the world? Nothin' but us. Nothin' but the folks. We come out and Grandpa he reached for the shovel shelf right off. And now, right off, you wanna bust up the folks," Tom cried. "Ma, we gonna catch up with ya. We wasn't gonna be gone long." Ma waved the jack handle. "S'pose we was camped, and you went on by. S'pose we got on through, how'd we know where to leave the word, and how'd you know where to ask?" She said, "We got a bit of road. Grandma's sick. She's up there on the truck a pine for a shovel herself. She's due tired out. We got a long bit of road ahead." Uncle John said, "But we could be making some money. We could have a little bit saved up, come time the other folks got there." The eyes of the whole family shifted back to Ma. She was the power. She had taken control. "The money we'd make wouldn't do no good," she said. "All we got is the family unbroke. Like a bunch of cows, when the lobos are ranging, stick all together. I ain't scared while we're all here, all that's alive, but I ain't gonna see us bust up. The Wilsons here is with us, and the preacher is with us. I can't say nothin' if they want to go, but I'm goin' cat wild with this here piece of barn if my own folks busts up." Her tone was cold and final. Tom said soothingly, "Ma, we can't all camp here. Ain't no water here. Ain't even much shade here. Grandma, she needs shade." "All right," said Ma. "We'll go along. We'll stop first place they's water and shade. An', the truck'll come back and take you in town to get your part, and it'll bring you back. You ain't goin' walkin' along in the sun, and I ain't havin' you out all alone, so if you get picked up there ain't nobody of your folks to help ya." Tom drew his lips over his teeth and then snapped them open. He spread his hands helplessly and let them flop against his sides. "Pa," he said, "if you was to rush her one side and me the other and then the rees pile on, and Grandma jump down on top, maybe we can get Moth out more'n 2-3 of us gets killed with that there jack handle. But if you ain't willin' to get your head smashed, I guess Ma's went and filled her flush." Jesus Christ, one person with their mind made up can shove a lot of folks around. "You win, Ma. Put away that jack handle 'fore you hurt somebody." Ma looked in astonishment at the bar of iron. Her hand trembled. She dropped her weapon on the ground, and Tom, with elaborate care, picked it up and put it back in the car. He said, "Pa, you got set back on your heels. Al, you drive the folks on and get 'em camped, and then you bring the truck back here. Me and the preacher'll get the pan off. Then, if we can make it, we'll run in Santa Rosa and try and get a Conrad. Maybe we can, seeing it's Saturday night. Get jumpin' now so we can go. Lemme have the monkey wrench and pliers out of the truck." He reached under the car and felt the greasy pan. "Oh, yeah, lemme have a can, that old bucket, to catch the oil. Got to save that." Al handed over the bucket and Tom set it under the car and loosened the oil cap with a pair of pliers. The black oil flowed down his arm while he unscrewed the cap with his fingers, and then the black stream ran silently into the bucket. Al had loaded the family on the truck by the time the bucket was half full. Tom, his face already smudged with oil, looked out between the wheels. "Get back fast," he called. And he was loosening the pan bolts as the truck moved gently across the shallow ditch and crawled away. Tom turned each bolt a single turn, loosening them evenly to spare the gasket. The preacher knelt beside the wheels. "What can I do?" "Nothin', not right now. Soon's the oil's out and I get these here bolts loose, you can help me drop the pan off." He squirmed away under the car, loosening the bolts with a wrench and turning them out with his fingers. He left the bolts on each end loosely threaded to keep the pan from dropping. "Ground's still hot under here," Tom said. And then, "Say, Cassie, you been awful goddamn quiet the last few days. Why, Jesus. When I first come up with you, you was making a speech every half hour or so. And here you ain't said 10 words the last couple days. What's a matter, gettin' sour?" Cassie was stretched out on his stomach, looking under the car. His chin, bristly with sparse whiskers, rested on the back of one hand. His hat was pushed back so that it covered the back of his neck. "I done enough talkin' when I was a preacher to last the rest of my life," he said. "Yeah, but you done some talkin' since, too." "I'm all worried up," Cassie said. "I didn't even know it when I was a preachin' around, but I was doin' considerable tomcattin' around. If I ain't gonna preach no more, I got to get married." "Why, Tommy, I'm a lustin' after the flesh." "Me too," said Tom. "Say, the day I come out'm cholester I was smokin'. I run me down a girl, a whore girl, like she was a rabbit. I won't tell ya what happened. I wouldn't tell nobody what happened." Cassie laughed. "I know what happened. I went a fastin' into the wilderness one time, and when I come out the same damn thing happened to me." "Hell it did," said Tom. "Well, I saved my money anyway, and I give that girl a run. Thought I was nuts. I shoulda paid her, but I only got $5 to my name. She said she didn't want no money. Here, roll in under here and grab a holt. I'll tap her loose. Then you turn out that bolt and I turn out my end, and we let her down easy. Careful that gasket. See, she comes off in one piece. They's only 4 cylinders to these here old dodges. I took one down one time. Got main bearings big as a cantaloupe. Now, let her down, hold it. Reach up and pull down that gasket where it's stuck, easy now. There." The greasy pan lay on the ground between them, and a little oil still lay in the wells. Tom reached into one of the front wells and picked out some broken pieces of babbitt. "There she is," he said. He turned the babbitt in his fingers. "Shaft's up. Look in back and get the crank." Turn her over till I tell you. Kazi got to his feet and found the crank and fitted it. Ready? Reach, now easy, little more, right there. Kazi kneeled down and looked under again. Tom rattled the connecting rod bearing against the shaft. There she is. What ya suppose done it? Kazi asked. Oh, hell, I don't know. This buggy been on the road 13 years. Says 60,000 miles on the speedometer. That means 160, and God knows how many times they turn the numbers back. Gets hot, maybe somebody let the oil get low. Jew went out. He pulled the cotter pins and put his wrench on a bearing bolt. He strained and the wrench slipped. A long gash appeared on the back of his hand. Tom looked at it, the blood flowed evenly from the wound and met the oil and dripped into the pan. That's too bad, Kazi said. What I should do that and you wrap up your hon? Hell, no. I never fixed no car in my life thout cuttin' myself. Now it's done I don't have to worry no more. He fitted the wrench again. Wished I had a crescent wrench, he said, and he hammered the wrench with the butt of his hand until the bolts loosened. He took them out and laid them with the pan bolts in the pan, and the cotter pins with them. He loosened the bearing bolts and pulled out the piston. He put piston and connecting rod in the pan. There, by God. He squirmed free from under the car and pulled the pan out with him. He wiped his hand on a piece of gunny sacking and inspected the cut. Bleedin' like a son of a bitch, he said. Well, I can stop that. He urinated on the ground, picked up a handful of the resulting mud, and plastered it over the wound. Only for a moment did the blood ooze out, and then it stopped. Best damn thing in the world to stop bleedin', he said. Handful of spider web'll do it too, said Kazi. I know, but there ain't no spider web, and you can always get piss. Tom sat on the running board and inspected the broken bearing. Now if we can only find a 25 Dodge and get a used con rod and some shims, maybe we'll make her all right. Al must have gone a hell of a long ways. The shadow of the billboard was 60 feet out by now. The afternoon lengthened away. Kazi sat down on the running board and looked westward. We gonna be in high mountains pretty soon, he said, and he was silent for a few moments. Then, Tom. Yeah? Tom, I been watchin' the cars on the road, them we passed and them that passed us. I been keepin' track. Track what? Tom, they's hundreds of families like us all goin' west. I watched. There ain't none of 'em goin' east, hundreds of 'em. Did you notice that? Yeah, I noticed. Why, it's like they was running away from soldiers. It's like a whole country is movin'. Yeah, Tom said. They is a whole country movin'. We're movin' too. Well, s'pose all these here folks and everybody, s'pose they can't get no jobs out there? Goddamn it. Tom cried. How'd I know? I'm Jew puttin' one foot in front of the other. I done it at Mac for 4 years. Jew marchin' in sellin' in messin' out mess. Jesus Christ, I thought it'd be somethin' different when I come out. Couldn't think o' nothin' in there, else you go stir happy, and now can't think o' nothin'. He turned on Kazi. This here bearing went out. We didn't know it was goin' so we didn't worry none. Now she's out and we'll fix her. And by Christ that goes for the rest of it. I ain't gonna worry. I can't do it. This here little piece of iron and Babbitt. See it? Ya see it? Well, that's the only goddamn thing in the world I got on my mind. I wonder where the hell Al is. Kazi said, now look, Tom. Oh, what the hell? So goddamn hard to say anything. Tom lifted the mud pack from his hand and threw it on the ground. The edge of the wound was lined with dirt. He glanced over to the preacher. You're fixin' to make a speech, Tom said. Well, go ahead. I like speeches. Warden used to make speeches all the time. Didn't do us no harm and he got a hell of a bang out of it. What you tryin' to roll out? Kazi picked the backs of his long knotty fingers. They's stuff goin' on and they's folks doin' things. Them people layin' one foot down in front of the other, like you says, they ain't thinkin' where they're goin', like you says, but they're all layin' 'em down the same direction, Jew the same. And if you listen, you'll hear a movine, and a sneakin', and a rustlin', and a restlessness. There's stuff goin' on that the folks doin' it don't know nothin' about, yet. They's gonna come somethin' out o' all these folks goin' west, out o' all their farms left lonely. They's gonna come a thing that's gonna change the whole country. Tom said, I'm still layin' my dogs down one at a time. Yeah, but when a fence comes up at ya, you're gonna climb that fence. I climb fences when I got fences to climb, said Tom. Cassie sighed. It's the bee's way. I gotta agree. But they's different kind of fences. They's folks like me that climbs fences that ain't even strung up yet, and can't help it. Ain't that LA comin'? Tom asked. Yeah. Looks like. Tom stood up and wrapped the connecting rod and both halves of the bearing in the piece of sack. Want to make sure I get the same, he said. The truck pulled alongside the road and Al leaned out the window. Tom said, You was a hell of a long time. How far'd you go? Al sighed. Got the rod out? Yeah. Tom held up the sack. Babbitt Jew broke down. Well, it wasn't no fault of mine, said Al. No. Where'd you take the folks? We had a mess, Al said. Grandma got to bellerin', and that set Rosa Sharn off and she bellered some. Got her head under a mattress and bellered. But Grandma, she was just layin' back her jaw and bayin' like a moonlight hound dog. Seems like Grandma ain't got no sense no more. Like a little baby. Don speak to nobody, Don seem to recognize nobody. Jew talks on like she's talkin' to Grandpa. Where'd you leave 'em? Tom insisted. Well, we come to a camp. Got shade and got water in pipes. Costs $50 a day to stay there. But everybody's so goddamn tired and wore out and missable, they stayed there. Ma says they got to 'cause Grandma's so tired and wore out. Got Wilson's tent up and got our tarp for a tent. I think Grandma gone nuts. Tom looked toward the lowering sun. Cassie, he said, somebody got to stay with this car or she'll get stripped. You'd as soon? Sure. I'll stay. Al took a paper bag from the seat. This here's some bread and meat Ma sent, and I got a jug of water here. She don't forget nobody, said Cassie. Tom got in beside Al. Look, he said. We'll get back Jew as soon's we can. But we can't tell how long. I'll be here. Alright. Don't make no speeches to yourself. Get goin', Al. The truck moved off in the late afternoon. He's a nice fella, Tom said. He thinks about stuff all the time. Well, hell, if you been a preacher, I guess you got to. Pa's all mad about it costs 50 cents Jew to camp under a tree. He can't see that nowadays. Said a cousin. Says next thing they'll sell ya a little tank of air. But Ma says they gotta be near shade and water 'cause of Grandma. The truck rattled along the highway, and now that it was unloaded, every part of it rattled and clashed. The sideboard of the bed, the cut body. It rode hard and light. Al put it up to 38 miles an hour and the engine clattered heavily and a blue smoke of burning oil drifted up through the floorboards. Cut her down some, Tom said. You gonna burn her right down to the hubcaps. What's eatin' on Grandma? I don't know. 'Member the last couple days she's been airy-nary, sayin' nothin' to nobody? Well, she's yellin' and talkin' plenty now, only she's talkin' to Grandpa. Yellin' at him. Kinda scary, too. You can almost see him a settin' there grinnin' at her the way he always done, a finger in hisself and grinnin'. Seems like she sees him a settin' there, too. She's givin' him hell. Say, Pa, he give me $20 to hand you. He don't know how much you gonna need. Ever see Ma stand up to him like she done today? Not I remember. I sure did pick a nice time to get paroled. I figured I was gonna lay around and get up late and eat a lot when I come home. I was going out and dance, and I was gonna go tomcattin', and here I ain't had time to do none of them things. Al said, I forgot. Ma give me a lot of stuff to tell you. She says don't drink nothin', and don't get in no arguments, and don't fight nobody. 'Cause she says she's scared you'll get sent back. She got plenty to get worked up about 'thout me givin' her no trouble, said Tom. Well, we could get a couple beers, can't we? I'm due a ravin for a beer. I dunno, said Tom. Pod crap a litter of lizards if we buy beers. Well, look, Tom. I got $6. You and me could get a couple pints and go down the line. Nobody don't know I got that $6. Christ, we could have a hell of a time for ourselves. Keep it, Jack, Tom said. When we get out to the coast you and me'll take her and we'll raise hell. Maybe when we're workin', he turned in the seat. I didn't think you was a fella to go down the line. I figured you was talkin' him out of it. Well, hell, I don't know nobody here. If I'm gonna ride around much, I'm gonna get married. I'm gonna have me a hell of a time when we get to California. Hope so, said Tom. You ain't sure of nothin' no more. No, I ain't sure of nothin'. When you killed that fella, did ya ever dream about it or anything? Did it worry ya? No. Well, didn't you never think about it? Sure. I was sorry 'cause he was dead. You didn't take no blame to yourself? No. I done my time, and I done my own time. Was it awful bad there? Tom said nervously, Look, Al. I done my time, and now it's done. I don't wanna do it over and over. There's the river up ahead, and there's the town. Let's try and get a Conrad in the hell with the rest of it. Ma's awful partial to you, said Al. She mourned when you was gone. Done it all to herself. Kinda cryin' down inside of her throat. We could tell what she was thinkin' about, though. Tom pulled his cap down low over his eyes. Now look here, Al. S'pose we talk about some other stuff. I was tellin' you what Ma done. I know. But, I ruther not. I ruther lay one foot down in front of the other. Al relapsed into an insulated silence. I was tryin' to tell ya, he said, after a moment. Tom looked at him, and Al kept his eyes straight ahead. The lightened truck bounced noisily along. Tom's long lips drew up from his teeth and he laughed softly. I know you was, Al. Maybe I'm kinda stir nuts. I'll tell ya about it sometime maybe. Ya see, it's somethin' you want to know. Kinda interestin'. But I got a kinda funny idea the bees thing be if I forget about it for a while. Maybe in a little while it won't be that way. Right now when I think about it my guts gets all droopy and nasty feelin'. Look here, Al, I'll tell you one thing, the jailhouse is a kinda way of driving a guy slowly nuts. See? And they go nuts, and you see 'em and hear 'em, and pretty soon you don't know if you're nuts or not. When they get to screamin' in the night sometimes you think it's you doin' the screamin', and sometimes it is. Al said, Oh. I won't talk about it no more, Tom. 30 days is all right, Tom said. And 180 days is all right. But over a year, I dunno. There's somethin' about it that ain't like nothin' else in the world. Somethin' screwy about it, somethin' screwy about the whole idea o' lockin' people up. Oh, the hell with it. I don't wanna talk about it. Look the sun flashin' on them windows. The truck drove to the service station belt, and there on the right-hand side of the road was a wrecking yard, an acre lot surrounded by a high barbed wire fence, a corrugated iron shed in front with used tires piled up by the doors, and price marked. Behind the shed there was a little shack built of scrap lumber and pieces of tin. The windows were windshields built into the walls. In the grassy lot the wrecks lay, cars with twisted, stoven noses, wounded cars lying on their sides with the wheels gone. Engines rusting on the ground and against the shed. A great pile of junk, fenders and truck sides, wheels and axles, over the whole lot a spirit of decay, of mold and rust, twisted iron, half-gutted engines, a mass of derelicts. Al drove the truck up on the oily ground in front of the shed. Tom got out and looked into the dark doorway. Don't see nobody, he said, and he called, Anybody here? Jesus, I hope they got a 25 Dodge. Behind the shed a door banged. A specter of a man came through the dark shed. Thin, dirty, oily skin tight against stringy muscles. One eye was gone, and the raw, uncovered socket squirmed with eye muscles when his good eye moved. His jeans and shirt were thick and shiny with old grease, and his hands cracked and lined and cut. His heavy, pouting underlip hung out sullenly. Tom asked, "You the boss?" The one-eye glared. "I work for the boss," he said sullenly. "Whatcha want?" "Got a wreck 25 Dodge? We need a conrod." "I don't know. If the boss was here he could tell ya, but he ain't here. He's went home." "Can we look and see?" The man blew his nose into the palm of his hand and wiped his hand on his trousers. "You from hereabouts?" "Come from east, goin' west." "Look around then. Burn the goddamn place down, for all I care. Looks like you don't love your boss none." The man shambled close, his one eye flashing. "I hate him," he said softly. "I hate the son of a bitch. Gone home now. Gone home to his house." The words fell stumbling out. He got away, a pickin' a fella and a tearin' a fella. He, the son of a bitch. Got a girl 19, purty. Says to me, "How'd you like to marry her?" Says that right to me. "And tonight," says, "they's a dance, how'd you like to go?" Me, he says it to me. Tears formed in his eyes and tears dripped from the corner of the red eye socket. "Someday, by God, someday I'm gonna have a pipe wrench in my pocket." When he says them things he looks at my eye. "And I'm gonna take his head right down off his neck with that wrench, little piece at a time." He panted with his fury. Little piece at a time, right down off'n his neck. The sun disappeared behind the mountains. Al looked into the lot at the wrecked cars. "Over there, look, Tom. That there looks like a 25 or 26. Tom turned to the one-eyed man. "Mind if we look?" "Hell, no. Take any goddamn thing you want." They walked, threading their way among the dead automobiles, to a rusting sedan, resting on flat tires. "Sure it's a 25, Al cried. "Can we yank off the pan, mister?" Tom kneeled down and looked under the car. "Pan's off already. One rod's been took. Looks like one gone." He wriggled under the car. "Get a crank and turn her over, Al." He worked the rod against the shaft. Pretty much froze with grease. Al turned the crank slowly. "Easy," Tom called. He picked a splinter of wood from the ground and scraped the cake of grease from the bearing and the bearing bolts. "How is she for tight?" Al asked. "Well, she's a little loose, but not bad." "Well, how is she for war?" "Got plenty shim. Ain't been all took up." "Yeah, she's okay. Turn her over easy now. Get her down, easy, there. Run over the truck and get some tools." The one-eyed man said, "I'll get you a box of tools." He shuffled off among the rusty cars and in a moment he came back with a tin box of tools. Tom dug out a socket wrench and handed it to Al. "You take her off. Don lose no shims and Don let the bolts get away, and keep track of the cotta pins. Hurry up. The light's gettin' dim." Al crawled under the car. "We oughta get us a set of socket wrenches," he called. "Can't get in no place with a monkey wrench." "Yell out if you want a hand," Tom said. The one-eyed man stood helplessly by. "I'll help you if you want," he said. "Know what that son of a bitch done? He come by and he got on white pants. And he says, 'Come on, let's go out to my yacht. By God, I'll wang him someday.'" He breathed heavily. "I ain't been out with a woman since I lost my eye." And he says stuff like that. And big tears cut channels in the dirt beside his nose. Tom said impatiently, "Why'n't you roll on? Got no guards to keep you here." "Yeah, that's easy to say. Ain't so easy to get a job, not for a one-eye man." Tom turned on him. "Now look-a here, fella. You got that eye wide open. And you dirty, you stink. You Jew skin for it. You like it. Let's you feel sorry for yourself. Course you can't get no woman with that empty eye flappin' around. Put somethin' over it and wash your face. You ain't hittin' nobody with no pipe wrench. I tell ya, a one-eye fella got a hard row." The man said. "Can't see stuff the way other fellas can. Can't see how far off a thing is. Everything's Jew flat." Tom said, "You full o' crap. Why, I knowed a one-legged whore one time. Think she was talking two bits in a alley? No, by God. She's getting $50 extra. She says, how many one-legged women you slept with? None. She says. Okay, she says. You got something pretty special here, and it's gonna cost ya $50 extra. And by God, she was getting 'em, too, and the fellas coming out thinking they're pretty lucky. She says she's good luck. And I knowed a humpback in a place I was. Make his whole livin' letting folks rub his hump for luck. Jesus Christ, and all you got is one eye gone. The man said stumblingly, well, Jesus, ya see somebody edge away from ya, and it gets into ya. Cover it up then, goddamn it. Ya sticking it out like a cow's ass. Ya like to feel sorry for yourself. There ain't nothing the matter with you. Buy yourself some white pants. Ya getting drunk and cryin' in ya bed, I bet. Need any help, Al? No, said Al. I got this here bearing loose. You trying to work the piston down? Don bang yourself, said Tom. The one-eyed man said softly, think somebody'd like me? Why, sure, said Tom. Tell 'em ya dong's growed since you lost your eye. Where it you fellas goin'? California. Whole family. Gonna get work out there. Well, you think a fella like me could get work? Black patch on my eye? Why not? You ain't no cripple. Well, could I catch a ride with you fellas? Christ, no. We're so goddamn full now we can't move. You get out some other way. Fix up one day these here wrecks and go out by yourself. Maybe I will, by God, said the one-eyed man. There was a clash of metal. I got her, Al called. Well, bring her out, let's look at her. Al handed him the piston and connecting rod and the lower half of the bearing. Tom wiped the Babbage surface and sighted along it sideways. Looks okay to me, he said. Say, by God, if we had a light we could get this here in tonight. Say, Tom, Al said, I've been thinkin'. We got no ring clamps. Gonna be a job getting them rings in, specially underneath. Tom said, you know, a fella told me one time you wrap some fine brass wire around the ring to haul her. Yeah, but how you gonna get the wire off? You don't get her off. She melts off and don't hurt nothin'. Copper wire'd be better. It ain't strong enough, said Tom. He turned to the one-eyed man. Got any fine brass wire? I dunno. I think they's a spool somewheres. Where d'ya think a fella could get one them patches one-eye fellas wear? I don't know, said Tom. Let's see if you can fin that wire. In the iron shed they dug through boxes until they found the spool. Tom set the rod in a vise and carefully wrapped the wire around the piston rings, forcing them deep into their slots, and where the wire was twisted he hammered it flat, and then he turned the piston and tapped the wire all around until it cleared the piston wall. He ran his finger up and down to make sure that the rings and wire were flush with the wall. It was getting dark in the shed. The one-eyed man brought a flashlight and shone its beam on the work. There she is, said Tom. Say, what'll you take for that light? Well, it ain't much good. Got 15 cents a new batteries. You can have her for, 35 cents. Okay, and what we owe ya for this here conrod and piston? The one-eyed man rubbed his forehead with a knuckle, and a line of dirt peeled off. Well, sir, I'd you to know. If the boss was here, he'd go to a parts book and he'd find out how much is a new one, and while you was workin', he'd be findin' out how bad you're hung up, and how much jack you got, and then he'd, well, say it's $8 in the part book, he'd make a price of $5. And if you put up a squawk, you'd get it for 3. You say it's all me, but, by God, he's a son of a bitch. Figures how bad you need it. I seen him get more for a ring gear than he give for the whole car. Yeah. But how much am I gonna give you for this here? 'Bout $1, I guess. Alright, and I'll give ya a quarter for this here socket wrench. Make it twice as easy. He handed over the silver. Thank ya. Uncover up that goddamn eye. Tom and Al got into the truck. It was deep dark. Al started the motor and turned on the lights. So long, Tom called. See you maybe in California. They turned across the highway and started back. The one-eyed man watched them go, and then he went through the iron shed to his shack behind. It was dark inside. He felt his way to the mattress on the floor, and he stretched out and cried in his bed, and the cars whizzing by on the highway only strengthened the walls of his loneliness. Tom said, "If you'd told me we'd get this here thing and get her in tonight, I'd 'a' said you was nuts." "We'll get her in alright," said Al. "You got to do her, though. I'd be scared I'd get her too tight and she'd burn out, or too loose and she'd hammer out." "I'll stick her in," said Tom. "If she goes out again, she goes out. I got nothing to lose." Al peered into the dusk. The lights made no impression on the gloom, but ahead, the eyes of a hunting cat flashed green in reflection of the lights. "You sure give that fella hell," Al said. "Sure did tell him where to lay down his dogs. Well, goddamn it, he was a skin for it. Jew a pattin' hisself 'cause he got one eye, puttin' all the blame on his eye. He's a lazy, dirty son of a bitch. Maybe he can snap out of it if he knowed people was wise to him." Al said, "Tom, it wasn't nothin' I done burned out that Baron." Tom was silent for a moment, then, "I'm gonna take a fall out of you, Al. You Jew scrabbling ass over tit, fear somebody gonna pin some blame on you. I know what's a matter. Young fella, all full of piss and vinegar. Want to be a hell of a guy all the time. But, goddamn it, Al, don keep your guard up when nobody ain't sparring with ya. You gonna be alright?" Al did not answer him. He looked straight ahead. The truck rattled and banged over the road. A cat whipped out from the side of the road and Al swerved to hit it, but the wheels missed and the cat leaped into the grass. "Nearly got him," said Al. "Say, Tom. You heard Connie talkin' how he's gonna study nights? I been thinkin' maybe I'd study nights too. You know, radio or television or diesel engines. Fella might get started that away." "Might," said Tom. "Find out how much they gonna sock you for the lessons, first. And figure out if you're gonna study 'em. There was fellas talking them male lessons in McClester. I never knowed one of 'em that finished up. Got sick of it and left 'em slide. God almighty, we forgot to get somethin' to eat. Well, Ma sent down plenty, preacher cooled need it all. Be some left. I wonder how long it'll take us to get to California. Christ, I don't know." Jew plug away at her. They fell into silence, and the dark came and the stars were sharp and white. Cassie got out of the back seat of the Dodge and strolled to the side of the road when the truck pulled up. "I never expected you so soon," he said. Tom gathered the parts in the piece of sacking on the floor. "We was lucky," he said. "Got a flashlight, too. Gonna fix her right up." "You forgot to take your dinner," said Cassie. "I'll get it when I finish. Here, Al, pull off the road a little more and come haul the light for me." He went directly to the Dodge and crawled under on his back. Al crawled under on his belly and directed the beam of the flashlight. "Not in my eyes. There, put her up." Tom worked the piston up into the cylinder, twisting and turning. The brass wire caught a little on the cylinder wall. With a quick push he forced it past the rings. "Lucky she's loose or the compression stop her. I think she's gonna work all right. Hope that wire don't clog the rings," said Al. "Well, that's why I hammered her flat. She won't roll off. I think she'll melt out and maybe give the walls a brass plate. Think she might score the walls?" Tom laughed. "Jesus Christ, them walls can take it. She's drinking oil like a gopher hole already. Little more ain't gonna hurt none." He worked the rod down over the shaft and tested the lower half. "She'll take some shim," he said. "Cassie." "Yeah. I'm talking up this here bearing now. Get out to that crank and turn her over slow when I tell ya." He tightened the bolts. "Now. Over slow." And as the angular shaft turned, he worked the bearing against it. "Too much shim," Tom said. "Hold it, Cassie." He took out the bolts and removed thin shims from each side and put the bolts back. "Try her again, Cassie." And he worked the rod again. "She's a little bit loose yet. Wonder if she'd be too tight if I took out more shim." I'll try her. Again he removed the bolts and took out another pair of the thin strips. Now try her, Cassie. That looks good, said Al. Tom called, she any harder to turn, Cassie? No, I don't think so. Well, I think she's snug here. I hope to God she is. Can't hone no Babbitt without tools. This here socket wrench makes her a hell of a lot easier. Al said, boss say that yard gonna be purty mad when he looks for that size socket and she ain't there. That's his screwin', said Tom. We didn't steal her. He tapped the cotter pins in and bent the ends out. I think that's good. Look, Cassie, you hold the light while me and I'll get this here pan up. Cassie knelt down and took the flashlight. He kept the beam on the working hands as they patted the gasket gently in place and lined the holes with the pan bolts. The two men strained at the weight of the pan, caught the end bolts, and then set in the others, and when they were all engaged, Tom took them up little by little until the pan settled evenly in against the gasket, and he tightened hard against the nuts. I guess that's her, Tom said. He tightened the oil tap, looked carefully up at the pan, and took the light and searched the ground. There she is. Liz, get the oil back in her. They crawled out and poured the bucket of oil back in the crankcase. Tom inspected the gasket for leaks. Okay, Al. Turn her over, he said. Al got into the car and stepped on the starter. The motor caught with a roar. Blue smoke poured from the exhaust pipe. Throttle down. Tom shouted. She'll burn oil till that wire goes. Gettin' thinner now. And as the motor turned over, he listened carefully. Put up the spark and let her idle. He listened again. Okay, Al. Turn her off. I think we done her. Where's that meat now? You make a darn good mechanic, Al said. Why not? I worked in the shop a year. We'll take her good and slow for a couple 100 miles. Give her a chance to work in. They wiped their grease-covered hands on bunches of weeds and finally rubbed them on their trousers. They fell hungrily on the boiled pork and swigged the water from the bottle. I like to starved, said Al. What we gonna do now, go on to the camp? I dunno, said Tom. Maybe they'd charge us a extra $50. Liz, go on and talk to the folks, tell 'em we're fixed. Then if they want to sock us extra, we'll move on. The folks'll want to know. Jesus, I'm glad Ma stopped us this afternoon. Look around with the light, Al. See we don't leave nothin'. Get that socket wrench in. We may need her again. Al searched the ground with the flashlight. Don't see nothin'. All right. I'll drive her. You bring the truck, Al. Tom started the engine. The preacher got in the car. Tom moved slowly, keeping the engine at a low speed, and Al followed in the truck. He crossed the shallow ditch, crawling in low gear. Tom said, these here Dodges can pull a house in low gear. She's sure ratioed down. Good thing for us, I want to break that barren in easy. On the highway the Dodge moved along slowly. The 12-volt headlights threw a short blob of yellowish light on the pavement. Cassie turned to Tom. Funny how you fellas can fix a car. July tried in and fix her. I couldn't fix no car, not even now when I seen you do it. Got to grow into her when you're a little kid, Tom said. It ain't you knowin'. It's more'n that. Kids now can tear down a car 'thout even thinkin' about it. A jackrabbit got caught in the lights and he bounced along ahead, cruising easily, his great ears flopping with every jump. Now and then he tried to break off the road, but the wall of darkness thrust him back. Far ahead bright headlights appeared and bore down on them. The rabbit hesitated, faltered, then turned and bolted toward the lesser lights of the Dodge. There was a small soft jolt as he went under the wheels. The oncoming car swished by. We sure squashed him, said Cassie. Tom said, some fellas like to hit 'em. Gives me a little shakes every time. Car sounds okay, them rings musta broke loose by now. She ain't smokin' so bad. You done a nice job, said Cassie. A small wooden house dominated the campground, and on the porch of the house a gasoline lantern hissed and threw its white glare in a great circle. Half a dozen tents were pitched near the house, and cars stood beside the tents. Cooking for the night was over, but the coals of the campfires still glowed on the ground by the camping places. A group of men had gathered to the porch where the lantern burned, and their faces were strong and muscled under the harsh white light that threw black shadows of their hats over their foreheads and eyes and made their chins seem to jut out. They sat on the steps, and some stood on the ground, resting their elbows on the porch floor. The proprietor, a sullen lanky man, sat in a chair on the porch. He leaned back against the wall, and he drummed his fingers on his knee. Inside the house a kerosene lamp burned, but its thin light was blasted by the hissing glare of the gasoline lantern. The gathering of men surrounded the proprietor. Tom drove the Dodge to the side of the road and parked. Al drove through the gate in the truck. "No need to take her in," Tom said. He got out and walked through the gate to the white glare of the lantern. The proprietor dropped his front chair legs to the floor and leaned forward. "You men want to camp here?" "No," said Tom. "We got folks here." "Hi, Pa." Pa, seated on the bottom step, said, "Thought you was gonna be all week. Get her fixed?" "We was pig lucky," said Tom. "Got a part for dark. We can get goin' fust thing in the mornin'." "That's a pretty nice thing," said Pa. "Ma's worried." "Ya grandma's off her chump?" "Yeah, Al tell me." "She any better now?" "Well, anyways she's a sleepin'." The proprietor said, "If you want to pull in here and camp it'll cost you 4 bits. Get a place to camp and water and wood. And nobody won't bother you." "What the hell," said Tom. "We can sleep in the ditch right beside the road, and it won't cost nothin'." The owner drummed his knee with his fingers. "Deputy sheriff comes on by in the night. Might make it tough for ya. Got a law against sleepin' out in this state. Got a law about vagrants. If I pay you a $50 I ain't a vagrant, huh?" "That's right." Tom's eyes glowed angrily. "Deputy sheriff ain't your brother-in-law by any chance?" The owner leaned forward. "No, he ain't. And the time ain't come yet when us local folks got to take no talk from you goddamn bums, neither. It don't trouble you none to take our 4 bits. And when we get to be bums? We ain't asked ya for nothin'. All of us bums, huh? Well, we ain't askin' no nickels from you for the chance to lay down and rest." The men on the porch were rigid, motionless, quiet. Expression was gone from their faces, and their eyes, in the shadows under their hats, moved secretly up to the face of the proprietor. Pa growled, "Come off it, Tom." "Sure, I'll come off it." The circle of men were quiet, sitting on the steps, leaning on the high porch. Their eyes glittered under the harsh light of the gas lantern. Their faces were hard in the hard light, and they were very still. Only their eyes moved from speaker to speaker, and their faces were expressionless and quiet. A lamp bug slammed into the lantern and broke itself, and fell into the darkness. In one of the tents a child wailed in complaint, and a woman's soft voice soothed it and then broke into a low song, "Jesus loves you in the night. Sleep good, sleep good. Jesus watches in the night. Sleep, oh, sleep, oh." The lantern hissed on the porch. The owner scratched in the V of his open shirt, where a tangle of white chest hair showed. He was watchful and ringed with trouble. He watched the men in the circle, watched for some expression. And they made no move. Tom was silent for a long time. His dark eyes looked slowly up at the proprietor. "I don't want to make no trouble," he said. "It's a hard thing to be named a bum." "I ain't afraid," he said softly. "I'll go for you and your deputy with my mitts, here now, or jump Jesus. But there ain't no good in it." The men stirred, changed positions, and their glittering eyes moved slowly upward to the mouth of the proprietor, and their eyes watched for his lips to move. He was reassured. He felt that he had won, but not decisively enough to charge in. "Ain't you got $50?" he asked. "Yeah, I got it. But I'm gonna need it. I can't set it out you for sleepin'." "Well, we all got to make a livin'." "Yeah," Tom said. "Only I wished they was some way to make her 'thout talking her away from somebody else." The men shifted again. And Pa said, "We'll get movin' smart early. Look, mister. We paid. This here fella is part of our folks. Can't he stay? We paid $50 a car, said the proprietor. Well, he ain't got no car. Car's out in the road. He came in a car, said the proprietor. Everybody'd leave their car out there and come in and use my place for nothing. Tom said, we'll drive along the road. Meet ya in the morning. We'll watch for ya. I can stay and Uncle John can come with us. He looked at the proprietor. That alright with you? He made a quick decision, with a concession in it. If the same number stays that come unpaid, that's alright. Tom brought out his bag of tobacco, a limp gray rag by now, with a little damp tobacco dust in the bottom of it. He made a lean cigarette and tossed the bag away. We'll go along pretty soon, he said. Pa spoke generally to the circle. It stirred hard for folks to tear up and go. Folks like us that had our place. We ate shiftless. Till we got tractored off, we was people with a farm. A young thin man, with eyebrows sunburned yellow, turned his head slowly. Croppin'? He asked. Sure we was sharecroppin'. Used to own the place. The young man faced forward again. Same as us, he said. Lucky for us it ain't gonna last long, said Pa. We'll get out west and we'll get work and we'll get a piece of growin' land with water. Near the edge of the porch a ragged man stood. His black coat dripped torn streamers. The knees were gone from his dungarees. His face was black with dust, and lined where sweat had washed through. He swung his head toward Pa. You folks must have a nice little pot of money. No, we ain't got no money, Pa said. But they's plenty of us to work, and we're all good men. Get good wages out there and we'll put 'em together. We'll make out. The ragged man stared while Pa spoke, and then he laughed, and his laughter turned to a high whinnying giggle. The circle of faces turned to him. The giggling got out of control and turned into coughing. His eyes were red and watering when he finally controlled the spasms. You going out there, oh, Christ. The giggling started again. You going out and get good wages, oh, Christ. He stopped and said slyly, pickin' oranges maybe? Gonna pick peaches? Pa's tone was dignified. We gonna take what they got. They got lots of stuff to work in. The ragged man giggled under his breath. Tom turned irritably. What's so goddamn funny about that? The ragged man shut his mouth and looked sullenly at the porch boards. You folks all going to California, I bet. I tell you that, said Pa. You didn't guess nothin'. The ragged man said slowly, Me, I'm comin' back. I been there. The faces turned quickly toward him. The men were rigid. The hiss of the lantern dropped to a sigh and the proprietor lowered the front chair legs to the porch, stood up, and pumped the lantern until the hiss was sharp and high again. He went back to his chair, but he did not tilt back again. The ragged man turned toward the faces. I'm going back to starve. I ruther starve all over at once. Pa said, what the hell you talkin' about? I got a handbill says they got good wages, and little while ago I seen a thing in the paper says they need folks to pick fruit. The ragged man turned to Pa. You got any place to go, back home? No, said Pa. We're out. They put a tractor past the house. You wouldn't go back then? Course not. Then I ain't gonna fret you, said the ragged man. Course you ain't gonna fret me. I got a handbill says they need men. Don't make no sense if they don't need men. Costs money for them bills. They wouldn't put 'em out if they didn't need men. I don't wanna fret you. Pa said angrily, you done some jackassin'. You ain't gonna shut up now. My handbill says they need men. You laugh and say they don't. Now, which one's a liar? The ragged man looked down into Pa's angry eyes. He looked sorry. Handbill's right, he said. They need men. Then why the hell you stirrin' us up laughin'? 'Cause you don't know what kind of men they need. What you talkin' about? The ragged man reached a decision. Look, he said. How many men they say they want on your handbill? 800, and that's in one little place. Orange color handbill? Why, yes. Give the name of the fella, says so and so, labor contractor. Pa reached in his pocket and brought out the folded handbill. "That's right. How'd you know?" "Look," said the man. "It don't make no sense. This fella wants 800 men. So he prints up 5,000 of them things and maybe 20,000 people sees 'em. And maybe 2-3,000 folks gets movin' account this here handbill. Folks that's crazy with worry. But it don't make no sense." Pa cried. "Not till you see the fella that put out this here bill. You'll see him, or somebody that's workin' for him. You'll be campin' by a ditch, you and 50 other families. And he'll look in your tent and see if you got anything left to eat. And if you got nothin', he says, 'Want a job?' And you'll say, 'I sure do, mister. I'll sure thank you for a chance to do some work.' And he'll say, 'I can use you.' And you'll say, 'When do I start?' And he'll tell you where to go, and what time, and then he'll go on. Maybe he needs 200 men, so he talks to 500, and they tell other folks, and when you get to the place, they's 1,000 men. This here fella says, 'I'm paying 20 cents an hour.' And maybe half the men walk off. But they's still 500 that's so goddamn hungry they'll work for nothing but biscuits. Well, this here fella's got a contract to pick them peaches or chop that cotton. You see now. The more fellas he can get, and the hungrier, less he's gonna pay. And he'll get a fella with kids if he can, 'cause, hell, I says I wasn't gonna fret ya." The circle of faces looked coldly at him. The eyes tested his words. The ragged man grew self-conscious. "I says I wasn't gonna fret ya, and here I'm doin' it. You gonna go on? You ain't goin' back." The silence hung on the porch. And the light hissed, and a halo of moths swung around and around the lantern. The ragged man went on nervously, "Lemme tell ya what to do when ya meet that fella says he got work. Lemme tell ya. Asked him what he's gonna pay. Asked him to write down what he's gonna pay. Asked him that. I tell you men, you're gonna get fooled if you don't." The proprietor leaned forward in his chair, the better to see the ragged dirty man. He scratched among the gray hairs on his chest. He said coldly, "You sure you ain't one of these here troublemakers? You sure you ain't a labor faker?" And the ragged man cried, "I swear to God I ain't. They's plenty of 'em," the proprietor said. "Goin' around stirrin' up trouble. Gettin' folks mad. Chiselin' in. They's plenty of 'em. Time's gonna come when we string 'em all up, all them troublemakers. We gonna run 'em out of the country. Man wants to work, okay, if he don't, the hell with him. We ain't gonna let him stir up trouble." The ragged man drew himself up. "I tried to tell you folks," he said. "Somethin' it took me a year to find out. Took 2 kids dead, took my wife dead to show me. But I can't tell you. I should've knew that. Nobody couldn't tell me, neither. I can't tell you about them little fellas layin' in the tent with their bellies puffed out and juice skin on their bones, and shiverin' and whinin' like pups, and me runnin' around tryin' to get work, not for money, not for wages." He shouted. "Jesus Christ, Jew for a cup of flour and a spoon of lard. And then the coroner come. Them children died of heart failure," he said. Put it on his paper. Shiverin', they was, and their bellies stuck out like a pig bladder. The circle was quiet, and mouths were open a little. The men breathed shallowly, and watched. The ragged man looked around at the circle, and then he turned and walked quickly away into the darkness. The dark swallowed him, but his dragging footsteps could be heard a long time after he had gone, footsteps along the road, and a car came by on the highway, and its lights showed the ragged man shuffling along the road, his head hanging down and his hands in the black coat pockets. The men were uneasy. One said, "Well, getting late. Got to get to sleep." The proprietor said, "Probably shiftless. They's so goddamn many shiftless fellas on the road now." And then he was quiet. And he tipped his chair back against the wall again and fingered his throat. Tom said, "Guess I'll go see Ma for a minute, and then we'll shove along a piece." The jowed men moved away. Pa said, "S'pose he's tellin' the truth, that fella?" The preacher answered, "He's tellin' the truth, alright. The truth for him. He wasn't makin' nothin' up. How about us? Tom demanded. Is that the truth for us? I don't know, said Cassie. I don't know, said Pa. They walked to the tent, tarpaulin spread over a rope. And it was dark inside, and quiet. When they came near, a grayish mass stirred near the door and arose to person height. Ma came out to meet them. I'll sleep in, she said. Grandma finally dozed off. Then she saw it was Tom. How'd you get here? She demanded anxiously. You ain't had no trouble? Got her fixed, said Tom. We're ready to go when the rest is. Thank the dear God for that, Ma said. I'm just twitterin' to go on. Want to get where it's rich and green. Want to get there quick. Pa cleared his throat. Fella was juicin', Tom grabbed his arm and yanked it. Funny what he says, Tom said. Says they's lots of folks on the way. Ma peered through the darkness at them. Inside the tent Ruthie coughed and snorted in her sleep. I washed him up, Ma said. Fust water we got enough of to give him a goin' over. Left the buckets out for you fellas to wash too. Can't keep nothin' clean on the road. Everybody in? Pa asked. All but Connie and Rosa Sharn. They went off to sleep in the open. Says it's too warm in under cover. Pa observed querulously, that Rosa Sharn is gettin' awful scary and nimsy-mimsy. It's her first, said Ma. Her and Connie sets a lot of store by it. You done the same thing. We'll go now, Tom said. Pull off the road a little piece ahead. Watch out for us if we don't see you. Be off right hand side. I'll stay in? Yeah. Leave Uncle John come with us. Night, Ma. They walked away through the sleeping camp. In front of one tent a low fitful fire burned and a woman watched a kettle that cooked early breakfast. The smell of the cooking bins was strong and fine. Like to have a play day them, Tom said politely as they went by. The woman smiled. They ain't done or you'd be welcome, she said. Come around in the daybreak. Thank you, ma'am, Tom said. He and Cassie and Uncle John walked by the porch. The proprietor still sat in his chair, and a lantern hissed and flared. He turned his head as the three went by. You running out of gas, Tom said. Well, time to close up anyways. No more half-bucks rollin' down the road, I guess, Tom said. The chair legs hit the floor. Don't you go assassin me. I 'member you. You're one of these here troublemakers. Damn right, said Tom. I'm Bolshevisky. They's too damn many of you kinda guys around. Tom laughed as they went out the gate and climbed into the Dodge. He picked up a clod and threw it at the light. They heard it hit the house and saw the proprietor spring to his feet and peer into the darkness. Tom started the car and pulled into the road. And he listened closely to the motor as it turned over, listened for knocks. The road spread dimly under the weak lights of the car,